Geelong and Essendon. How was the missus at home, mate? Because Geelong came out and this is another tip I got wrong. I was like, oh, Essendon too fast, too young. There's so much space on the field. Geelong can't squeeze them, and I could not have got this wrong. My tipping has been horrible. Round one, I tipped the doggies to beat Melbourne, thinking they'd have a bit of a chip on their shoulder. Wrong. I got very lucky tipping Fremantle and the Suns, who both looked horrible in parts. Um, Now, the big thing to take out of this was is Dangerfield. But first, how was the family at home? How was the missus take on this game, and how much were you smiling? Mate, you got a losing household.
She's not home at the moment and that, and I had messaged her and say, "Oh, can you come home? Do you want to come in and talk about the Bombers?" She's like, "Oh, it's only fucking round one, isn't it?" I was so we have the ladder up in the fridge. God, I was so happy doing the ladder yesterday, even after Richmond lost. I was still at the Essendon down the bottom of the ladder. That was just brilliant. It made my weekend. I was actually down at the Cricket Club. We were hosting a grand final, so um, I came home for a little bit. She was meant to be going to the game, but she was feeling a bit crook, so she stayed home and watched it. And yeah, wow, bloody Geelong cost me my friggin' multi, and then I had them 1 for 39. Every other league that I had, I thought Geelong would dominate this game, but yeah, not by what was it, 66 points in the end. They just started on an absolute fire. And the thing is, even with Cameron going down injured, still didn't stop them. It was just they were everywhere. Hawkins. Though I think one of the coaching moves to put Stewart on Hawkins just did not work at all. Hawkins had a field day there. Danger did say, and a few people got on him and saying, "I'm going to play more midfield." The problem is now Cameron, if he's missing, Danger is the one that always goes forward to, or spends a bit more time there. Maybe not as much why Duncan's out, but yeah, that's. But God, he looked good. The
He
155. We
looks
know what
so
Dan,
good. He
and we talked about this too, like mentioning about Dangerfield how he finished last year, and this is we know the Cats. This is their last chance. This is the roll the dice. We need to try to win the flag. Dangerfield's never won one. He wants that flag. Jez has moved there to win that flag. So they're going to go all out. Now I think at some point they're going to peter out, or they might even make the finals and miss out on the prelims or whatever. But yeah, some of these Geelong players are definitely worth getting on because they
Yep,
think it's
and
their
they're
year.
adapting. They're adapting. They've got fresh coaches in. They're trying to play to their strengths. Whereas before it was like, chip mark and try and keep keepings off to keep ourselves, fit and bruise free or whatever. But they're trying to embrace their strengths and looking at their talents and like, well, we've got a real tough in and under Geelong, like with Dangerfield, we've got Hawkins, we've got Cameron, and just trying to look at their strengths and going, right, this is what we need to play towards, which makes sense. Dangerfield, I think, killed it. I got him in draft league, like cheap as well, like not super cheap, but when I think I went and got Steele, which obviously hurt. Came back, got I think Lloyd was free. Butters I got in the third round. Still came back and got a Dangerfield. Still got a Cripps. Um, so much value and playing pure midfield, I think he's definitely a good option. If you have him already in standard, I think you are laughing based on the price point, 567K. Again, someone who I think is good value. And if you got on him, sure. If you haven't got on him, there's no direct rush. Again, that 155's already gone through his score. And again, you don't downgrade to a premium to another premium or someone that could average similar to someone you've already got. So for me, Dangerfield will probably be around that. If he goes well, around that sort of top 10 mark. He'll hurt you some weeks and he won't others. So you just kind of pick someone else up that'll probably do very similar or that you already have in your team. Or you pick someone up at a cheaper price point. So if he stinks it up later on and he comes really cheap, then I might consider him. Or at the time that I need an upgrade, someone of similar ability with similar potential. So Stewart was the one for me. I thought was very. I don't want to say lucky. Did well enough. Did Stewart things, but the way that the game is sort of shifting and being played, I still like Stewart, but I wasn't extremely. I guess, mind you, actually, it was hard when the ball was never down in fucking Essendon's half, isn't it, Swizz?
It works both ways, but they had no proper forward, so he could zone off and intercept every day of the week when it was in the first half, and that's what Stewart does. So against better teams, and now sort of that structure's changed for them down defence. Yeah, I think. we had the same chat about Sicily. There's going to be weeks where Stewart's going to do Stewart things, but I just think sometimes he's going to have to play more accountability this year against the bigger teams and the higher teams. So yeah, you're going to have Stewart and Sicily have their 110, 120 games, but I think other weeks we're going to actually see maybe the odd 80 because they're going to have to play man on man because you can't have, well, Sam DeConning obviously now being out.
Yes, I'm interested to see how he goes against Sydney this week because you're
Mm.
going to have, Buddy will probably get taken up by someone, but then your McDonald's or some of your other impact players. So, Parker, when he went forward, was dominating. Heaney as well. He's going to have to be accountable. And I honestly think DeConing is more important to this side than people knew. Chris obviously doubted whether DeConing even played when they had Henry and Stewart and Kolajasny and Blycarves, etc., Blixarves. And he did. He was named with it. Stewart. So Scott liked him. Issue is he got knocked out, so he'll miss a week. So I'm not getting rid of him out of my side. He was on 30 at half time, and the ball was barely back there. And I thought he was impressive enough. If you get a team that kind of wastes it forward a little bit, the reason I like him, number one, he traded all preseason on Hawkins and Cameron. Right. So yes, he's a key kind of guy, but he's tall enough. He backs his intercept, and when the ball hits the ground, or the ball's in open contest, he's actually quicker and deceptive. He actually then goes and splits off his man and actually tries to get on the outside and actually breaks off. So I think he has some potential. If you have him, I definitely wouldn't be getting rid of him just yet, even though he's out for a week more because of concussion symptoms. But he was on track for a 60, Swizz.
Yeah, no, he was definitely playing his role, and he'll take the odd intercept. On Stewart, I actually think he might have to take Heaney this week, and that which will be really interesting. It'll be a great matchup if that happens. That's the sort of matchup you want to go to watch the footy. Two really good players play. But yeah, no, and DeConning, I think he does come back in because they need him for that structure. Releases Stewart, let Stewart do his thing. Um, yeah, I like we talk about how good of a team they are and what they're trying to do, but there's still a couple other younger players. Obviously Evans had to come on the weekend. Zach Guthrie's starting to get better, but he's still kind of youngish and that not as experienced compared to some others. Max Holmes close, so they still got some guys who don't have that many games in them, where these other guys that they're relied on to play their role and have to do different things each week. So I think Stewart, yeah, it's a bit different for him these days. He's going to have to play that odd game, and yeah, it will be interesting going forward. The other one interesting for Geelong was Stengel coming in.
Stengel, I've just got him here,
Yeah,
247K. Came out with a really good score. I think he got 120. Um, yeah, so I mean, obviously a bit of a whitewash this game, but he definitely got on the end of it. Been very impressive. Basically, I think when he came to the club, they said, right, well, this is the role that you need to kind of work towards, and he's been super impressive. I don't know if Eddie Betts has had any go in it. I think Eddie Betts has been given a bit of credit, whether credit is due for Eddie Betts, but I think Stengel needs to put his hand up. Definitely one that I'm kind of looking at as well, just to sort of watch because he's around that similar price point to quite a few others like Brody, etc. Now, Sydney this week, it'll be interesting, a bit of a harder matchup. See how he goes, see how it kind of works in with Duncan back as well. Obviously, different roles, but just kind of see how everything flows up against a tougher opponent this week. And if he does well, then you got Collingwood, Brisbane, Hawks, North, Fremantle coming up after that. So there's definitely some opportunities for a fit and firing Geelong to do some damage. Swizz.
it is, but they were mixing Gary Rowan this week too. It's sort of how Geelong make up that forward line because they really like Radaglia. There's a lot of still question marks about him. He's got a lot of talent. Um, if Cameron doesn't get up, or how long Cameron's out for, how they shape that forward line. Does Danger play a bit more there? So I think Stengel's going to be one of those up and down guys where naturally the small forwards are. He's going to have days where he's going to kick bags, and there's other days where he's not going to get near it. So it's not something I prefer in Supercoach. I like the guys who are going to be
No,
a bit more
I,
consistent.
I agree. I'm trying to think of the other guy's name that they're missing as well. The Dreadlocks. Um, he wasn't playing, was he?
Oh, you mean Delhouse? He was
No,
playing.
no, no.
Oh no,
He's the
Myers,
flog that used to have
Yeah,
Grime
Myers.
Myers.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah.
probably
So he's a
same sort
really
of
good,
role.
talented footballer. So that's the problem just there, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
So
That's
how
pretty
do
much
they
what I
all
was
those fit
looking
them in?
at.
And
Yeah,
that's why
that's
Close played, and Close took his opportunities there like that. They were talking about that on the radio. Like these guys have got to come in and make the most when they do come in. And Close kicked 2 goals and definitely played his role. So if he was to do well again this week and Stingle has a quiet game, it could be just, well, Stingle out you go again, or and that, like Geelong, as we said, they've got one thing on their mind, and if players have poor performances, they've got depth to cover them. So, especially up in that forward line. So that's
No,
me
I
for the
agree.
catch, mate. It's over to the current wooden spoon placer.
Oh, well, yeah, no, well, not only that, apparently, good old Max, player for Geelong, just told those boys, Essendon boys, they should have just stayed homes. But yes, we move on and digress. The other team. Now here's the issue. Now I don't know who wasn't working hard enough both ways, whether it was St Kilda or Essendon, but pretty much once their midfield lost possession of the ball, they got absolutely spanked going the other way. Just slack, lazy two-way running, and I should know about it because I'm both slack and lazy. So um, Nick Martin now has to be spoken about. NIC can't even afford the K. He 102,000. Now here's the thing. This is it was a short time burn. Pretty much, I came out saying people talking about taking Hayes or whether you should take Hayes, and I was like, okay, cool. Well, if you rate, because at this time I thought Tipper was nearing return, and I was like, okay, well, this is here's a Martin's a depth player, might get some roles, but was told looked like he was playing Tipper's role. The other guy, Baldwin, I was like, well, I don't think he plays next week when Stringer's back, and helped for the fact that he had a shitter. So I was like, okay, well, these are two guys who, in my opinion, job security wasn't that great. So I was like, hey, if Hayes gets a 118 or 127 or whatever, if you wanted to take it, then you can get rid of one of those guys that probably don't have the best job security. Get Holman or someone or other, Hollands, sorry, from the Suns, who I think will probably play more games than both of them combined, right? So I was very outlandish in my statement. Didn't work out well when obviously Nick Martin came out and killed it. Awesome game, completely changed my opinion within a 3 hour period. Um, and it came out at halftime as well, saying Tipper's still a month away. So that sold me. If I had have known before the game, going into into this series, into the season, into this week where you're picking teams, and they said, "Hey, yeah, Tipper's still a month away," because you don't know. And Darling with Dixon was like, "Okay, well, maybe I'll get Dixon because Darling has just come back to the club as well. Probably going to take a little while to get back in." Literally gets said that he's going to probably play against North Melbourne this week. So I'm like, a guy who I thought might have been a few weeks away, now playing this weekend. Tipper, who I thought was going to be back imminently, is now a month away. So I'm like, cool. Well, that would have been a much easier decision if I had known this yesterday. Is that a Billy Madison?
I,
So,
I got
I mean, it's one of
I,
those
I got
things.
I got kissed on the dick with this one, mate, because I was still debating about Torn Francis and Cherry versus Ward and Rochelle. So I was like, well, I need the extra 20K sitting there just in case. So I was like, well, out you go, Baldwin. In you come Hayes, and we'll just chuck the emergency on you. Nearly thought about bringing in the loophole player for him, but I was like, oh well, I don't really want a donut sitting there. But yeah, what a first game, rightly so, the rising star mentioned 27 touches, 10 marks, 5 goals on debut. And we are talking about how good Dacos' debut, and then this guy just
I know.
completely outdid it, did it.
Do you still think he gets it though in a losing team? Well, I guess Adelaide lost as well because Rochelle 5 goals as well.
Makes no
Look
difference. He
clean,
had
high
27,
impact.
mate.
Yeah,
27
true.
touch. The 27 touches nearly
That's
puts him up
crazy.
there, and then he just kicked 5 goals. If he wasn't out there, they would have got spanked by 20 goals. That's how shit
Yeah,
the rest of them were, mate. And
I agree.
like, I know
Getting that many
Langford's
touches.
important for their structure, but Essendon's biggest whipping boy is bloody Tommy Cutler, and he's been their second best player on the field this week. They were that frigging disgusting.
Well,
And
let's
and
talk
I
about his
and I hope
security
it
though.
continues.
So Martin's security definitely gets improved because Langford's gone. That means like even like Devon Smith might even go play on the wing and do something useful for once. But it could change the dynamic a little bit. When you have Shield or someone else might end up getting pushed up the ground or playing forward flank, and it kind of opens it up for him a little bit. So I think that does help his security. And again, it goes back to the premise where these teams that are trying to make the eight, they need these mature players to kind of come in and fire instead of trying to wait for a young rookie to kind of try and find their feet. So I think he plays. I think Hayes as well has the same value for Saints based on that reason. The fact that those two teams really do need success, or they're going to be the whipping boys for the coaches comp. So definitely get him in. Don't get him in this week. I don't mind it though if you have so Jared Berry. If Jared Berry is injured and you have Rochelle or Rochelle, or however you say it, in
Shelley.
your team, Rochelle, then I would be quite happy for you to actually trade out Berry, Rochelle into the midfield and then get a Martin because I think his job security is probably the best out of those 1 or 2 Ks. Hayes, I'm still worried about Ryder where he fits in, so we can watch that one. And Durden as well, obviously didn't, scored less than that. So for me, if Berry's injured and you do want to take that cash, Martin is your guy. Swizz, do you agree?
Yep, yep, no problems with that at all.
Yeah.
The
Best.
three other bombers I want to mention: Merritt, Parrish, obviously the two big boys, and then Caldwell, who was at that Berry price range, and I kind of was flipping with him, and I know quite a few people actually went Caldwell over Berry. He did exactly what he needed to do. The 23 touches, the 8 mark showed he got a bit more of that flank and that lead up. Kicked 2 important goals, so he's not playing that pure midfielder. Um, and that's what we were expecting. We thought he would play midfield and then swap up because they've got that shield and then you're trying to fit in McGrath and Parrish and Merritt. They've got so many running through there. So
But those
Caldwell
two
isn't.
goals and to hit a 91. So I mean, if they win games, then maybe he scores more. But for me, if he didn't kick those 2 goals as well, like it's kind of it screams at me 80 to mid 80s, which is
Even less, mate.
decent,
Even
decent
less.
enough. Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
I
But like
actually
an
think it's
80,
more. I think it's more probably in the 70s there. And I think he's going to
I'd
have
say
some.
80. I don't mind it. Yeah, some 90
Mm,
games and a few
yeah.
unders, but I think he's
And
going to stagnate.
it's not bad because I think he needs 82, 81 average to make that 150K. So it's still a decent pick. Like I'm all about the Caldwell pick, but it's not. I don't think it's going to be 90s and the hundreds. I think that's slightly back on what that is. So
Yep.
that
So
that
for me, what I'd be looking at is that if it was this week and say Berry is injured, because we don't know, right? I'd be looking at Martin just in case there's another rookie that I've missed. Because at the moment, when you look at if the players that you might have missed, and I don't think Martin was that heavily owned, I'd be going, okay, well, Berry down to him and keep that cash for a week. And then that way get another week starter and then look at where you can assault with that cash. And if it's bringing in Caldwell after another good round, you're like, wonderful. I've looked at him for a bit more and bang, you're in. But Caldwell is again injury prone, so I'd be adverse to bringing him in a week early if I could help it, because you all know Langford's just done an injury, so God knows what the fitness trainers are doing at Essendon. Obviously, it's not running both ways. Swizz,
Oh, exactly, mate. And
whipping
how
boys.
like and talking to some Bomber supporters, Merritt 39 and Parrish 34. So imagine your best two midfielders having 73 touches between them and having no effect on the game. It's
Zero impact.
at least with Parrish, hopefully he has a few games like this and that. And yeah, he's definitely one of those guys I would like to pick up later if he was to drop some price and get to a nice juicy under 550 price. Because obviously we know what he can do in his role and stuff. But yeah, it'd be very interesting because they're playing your boys this week back at their home ground at Marvel. And it's either obviously one or two ways. They're going to come out and flog you guys because they're going to have the biggest rocket up their ass going and they're going to show some real spirit in that, or they are actually genuinely shit and you guys are just going to make them look second rate.
I think they'll come out trying, but Brisbane didn't play
I think
well
they
by
can't
any.
try. Trying's not the problem, but
Yeah,
how are they generally like? Yeah, you can come out trying and still be shit, or
yeah, that's true.
is it the fact of they're actually decent and that they just need the rocket up their ass and that? Now I generally think they're just shit. So I, I think, and I'm going to that game, so this should be fun. Any Bombers supporters, you'll probably see me. I'm probably the one bloke in the crowd either with a Richmond top on or not wearing Essendon colours. So yeah, go Lions this week. I'll be there cheering the Fitzroy boys on.
Oh, nice work. Yeah, I think it could go either way as well. And Brisbane didn't play well by any stretch of the imagination, but if it comes out and it's a close game, I think Brisbane will probably wear them down. Um, the things that need to be noted as well, Ridley and Heppel, both guys were around that 100 price point, both stunk it up. Ridley got a 68, completely unders. A lot of defenders got completely unders, and Heppel as well. So it doesn't help the fact they got flogged. So I think a lot of their midfielders or outside players just didn't get it. So Heppel, I think, was playing more wing. I didn't see this game as much. And Ridley as well, I think, is a concerning one, especially seeing that the ball was down there a lot. Swizz.
Yeah, and this is what we were saying about obviously Ridley wasn't. They had on Hawkins, they had Stewart there matched off, and they got helped out by Cameron going off. But they had other guys because of Radigalia and how Stingle was playing and that they couldn't just zone off and do what the Bombers wanted to do, and the pressure that Geelong's midfield obviously had them under high up the ground with their midfielders, and you just don't get that room when you've got all that much pressure on you. So there'll be games where, yeah, they'll get back in, but I think it could be a little bit of that trend too. We've always said, oh, it's the intercept markers. They're the guys that you want to get the zone off, and this could be the year it's more back to the halfback flanker. Just be also with that
Yeah,
stand rule, and we talked about, and yeah, teams that aren't
more
aware,
running.
and the running pass and the speeding up the game. So yeah, you're going to get the teams that play that more slower brand where they can just zone off. Yes, but I think other teams, just yeah, we always see this as trends in the game, and it happens. Like Hawthorn had their period, then Richmond came in with their trend with the small forwards and that, and now we move into a new game style with like the how Melbourne play. And yeah, and Carlton, I think, are playing very similar to that. It's coming off those halfback flanks. It's using your good midfield, big body midfielders, and yeah, some of these intercept markers we might not actually see the best of them this year.
Yep. And I think for me, it's been coming down to controlling what you can control. So the big focus on center bounce as well, really trying to get the dynamic right at every single center bounce attendance to have different types. So that way you can attack, defend, be dynamic, have good ball users. So you might be able to have a bit of zip and a zag or get it to the outside to a good user. Because we know that it's really critical that you make the most of those opportunities. So I'll be definitely interested to watch another week's data there. Um, and again, I guess Geelong have such a tall forward line that he was always going to be playing some kind of accountable role because you can't just zip off. It's kind of the same thing with McGovern when Richmond went too tall. It's hard to be able to float off when you've got a guy that's 2 meters or 1.9 something meters that is just hanging behind you because you're worried that they're just going to sit up on your head and you can't just sort of zone off and get a cheap one. So, um, next one for me, I think that pretty much actually wraps up
Yeah, that's
them,
it.
Swizzy.
That's
Oh,
all we need.
McGrath as
Let's
well.
jump.
Quick shout out for
Bugger off.
McGrath. Probably get no. Probably get for draft leagues. Probably get a DPP swing. So I'll be watching that one as well. Probably goes around the 100 mark. If that we will see, but one to keep an eye on anyway.